you've been brave in, telling your story, not some dramatic thing, but just telling the things you've seen. Did it encounter, did it impact your career? Is that why more people haven't come out? Like, you've mentioned, Roswell, like how, what advice do you give to people, to the community, to me as a scientist, for ways to go forward about this topic and still have not being put in a bin in society that he's a loon or she's a loon or that person's a
Mine
loon?
is to get away from the little green men. Just divorce the two little green men. And, and I've talked to Lou Elizondo about this, and the group that they're working with, which is incredible. I mean, they've got Steve Justice, who used to run Skunk Works, where they built, projects.
Now, Lou Elizondo, we should mention, was a program director.
He ran the ATIP program at the Pentagon.
And ATIP was a program that was tasked with investigating any kind of UFOs, UAPs.
Yes. So what's funny is the unofficial official report that I joke about.
Yeah.
The guy who wrote the unofficial official report was actually an original member of ATIP. And the original stuff that ATIP did was FOIA exempt. And people go, how do you know that? I go, because I stood there with the memo in my hand that said these are, it literally, I watched the DOD memo that said it and it was signed. So he was one. So that's why I call it the unofficial official report. It was never releasable, because people go, well, I put in a FOIA request and I didn't get that. I go, well, just because you put in a FOIA request and get it. I go, because how much time do you think that guy's going to spend to get you the information that you requested if he can't find it? I actually got called by the Navy. I had a commander in the Navy call me about right before the article came out in the New York Times. This was starting to come back, and she had called me because there was a FOIA request for stuff about the Nimitz incident, and I said, do you know of anything? She called me. She goes, do you know of anything else besides the situation reports that come off the ship? And you got to remember, when the situation report comes off the ship, that's like third hand. So we tell someone, they tell someone, that person has to write it up. So there's all kinds of inaccuracies in it. But then there's the unofficial official report that's actually pretty well written. There's some errors in it, but it was, I didn't help write it. I just did it. And he did a really good job of researching it and figuring out who's who in the zoo and the players. Mm-hmm. So she called me and said, is there anything out there? And I said, officially out there? She said, yes. I said, I don't know of anything. I knew of the unofficial official report, which is that one, but I'm not, if you don't know about it, I'm not going to tell you, because it's not my job, and nor did I care.
I mean, did in that whole situation, you mentioned Lou, I mean, did you think about your impact to your career? Like, just to get back to the question, do you think other pilots, other people like in Roosevelt are thinking about this kind of thing? Why aren't they talking about this? Why are people afraid to talk about this?
Well, honestly, the military and the press, there's a distrust. I'll just tell you that right now. We typically don't like talking to the press, because if I talk to you, especially when I do even the TV shows, because I've been on a couple of shows, when you look at it, they come to my house and they film me for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then what you see on the screen is 5 minutes.
Well, and the other thing with the press, let me give you my perspective from autonomous vehicles, is the clipping happens, yes, but also the incompetence. Let me just call out journalism. They're not thinking. So here's the thing. I have a PhD, and I've taken painfully too many classes from like physics and math, and I also have a deep curiosity about the world. I read a lot. That seems to be missing with journalism. So you're talking to a person who is not going to push the story forward in an interesting way. Not the story, but the actual investigation of perhaps one of the most amazing things that humans have witnessed in history. Like, it might have been nothing. Who knows? What you witnessed might have been, from a sort of debunking perspective, might have been some kind of trick of mind. You and others have hallucinated something. There could be some simple explanation, but possibly it was something not of this world. And to not do justice to this story from a scientific perspective, it seems at best negligence. And so, well, that's true for journalists. That's true for other scientists.
It's human nature.
Yeah.
If we see something that we can't explain, then sometimes if you just maybe it's just
Yes.
me, and you let it go away, and you don't think about it, and maybe it'll just, it's you ignore it. The
Yeah.
other side is the inquisitive mind that says, well, what was that? And I want to dig more into it, and if you look at it, or you're going against the norm, you can get ostracized, and if you look at, and Einstein's the perfect example. I mean, when he started coming up with some of his theories, some of the top physicists in the world were like, dude, you're a nut job. And he's literally proving them, but he didn't have, he proved them in theory, but he didn't have the means to actually do the experiment to prove his
There,
theory.
there's a great book that I recommend people read called "Proving Einstein Right" by Jim Gates that talks about like the hard work that people try to do years after to try to experimentally validate the predictions that Einstein made with his theories. It's fascinating, but yes, at the time, it's kind of crazy what he's saying.
Yeah, if you look at it back at the time, don't we look at it now and go, well, the guy was a walking genius, and he was. But if you go back in time when he was doing it, it was like, what are you talking about?